You've probably met them before, Thurkan. Those people who seem almost too good to be true. They're the ones who never say no, who apologize for everything, who smile even when you can see the exhaustion in their eyes. And here is what is really fascinating. While everyone calls them such nice people, there is something about them that feels empty, like they're there, but not really there. What if I told you that this isn't coincidence? What if the very thing we've been taught is our greatest virtue, being endlessly nice, Sudi, is actually the thing that is making us invisible, unfulfilled, and strangely alone? This is what I call the harmlessness trap, and it is one of the most devastating patterns I've ever studied. Because, here is the twisted irony, the harder you try to be liked by being nice, the more forgettable you become. The more you avoid conflict, the less people respect you, the more harmless you make yourself, the more harm you are actually doing to your own soul. Let me paint you a picture. Think about someone you know who fits this description perfectly. They're always available when you need them. They never disagree with anything you say, and they seem to have this supernatural ability to sense exactly what you want to hear. Sounds perfect, right? But here is the strange thing. Right. When you really think about it, do you actually feel close to this person? Do you respect them? Do you even really know who they are? Probably not. And that is because niceness without authenticity isn't actually connection formance. It is performance. And deep down, everyone can sense when someone is performing rather than being real. The science behind this is absolutely mind-blowing. Researchers have discovered something called the Warmth-Competence model, which explains how we evaluate other people. Warmth is how likable and trustworthy someone seems. Competence is how capable and strong they appear. Now, here is where it gets interesting. People who are high in warmth but low in competence. Basically, people who are nice but have no backbone fifine, are liked but not respected. They're seen as friendly, but weak, kind, but forgettable. Think about your own life for a second. The people you most admire, the ones you turn to when life gets tough, the ones who've had the biggest impact on you city, are they the endlessly agreeable ones? Or are they the people who are kind, but also have opinions, who care about you enough to tell you hard truths, who can say no when they need to? I am willing to bet it is the second group. Because here is what most people don't understand. True strength isn't about being harsh or selfish. It is about being authentic. It is about having the courage to be real, even when being real might upset someone. But let's dig deeper into why so many of us fall into this trap in the first place. For most people, it starts incredibly young. Maybe you had a parent who only showed affection when you were good sued, which usually meant quiet, obedient, and invisible. Maybe you learned early that love was conditional on never causing problems, never having needs, never rocking the boat. Or perhaps you experienced rejection once eventivine. Maybe kids at school made fun of you for speaking up, or a teacher embarrassed you for having a different opinion. So you learned to play it safe. You learned that the way to avoid pain was to avoid standing out. You developed this internal voice that said, if I am just nice enough, agreeable enough, then people will have to like me. But here is the devastating truth, that strategy doesn't actually work. Not really. Sure, people might like you in the moment. They might appreciate how easy you are to deal with, but they don't remember you. They don't miss you when you are gone. They don't fight for you when you need someone in your corner. Because here is what happens when you make yourself harmless. You become optional. You become background noise. You become someone people take for granted because they know you'll never push back, never demand better, never challenge them to be more than they are. And the cruelest part, the people who fall into this trap are often the ones with the biggest hearts. They're not being nice because they're weak tea. They're being nice because they genuinely care about others. They want to make the world a better place. They want to be good people, but somewhere along the way, they got confused about what good actually means. They started believing that being good meant erasing themselves. That kindness meant never having needs. That love meant always saying yes, even when yes was killing them inside. Let me tell you about Sarah. Not her real name, but her story is real. Sarah was the kind of person everyone described as an angel. She volunteered at 3 different charities. She never missed a birthday. She was always the first to offer help, and the last to ask for it. On paper, her life looked beautiful, but when she came to see me, she was falling apart. I don't understand, she said, tears streaming down her face. I do everything right. I am kind to everyone. I never cause problems, so why do I feel so empty? Why does it feel like nobody really sees me? The answer was both simple and heartbreaking. Sarah had become so focused on being what everyone else needed that she'd completely lost touch with who she actually was. She'd spent so many years saying yes to everyone else that she'd forgotten how to say yes to herself. She'd become so afraid of conflict that she'd given up her right to have opinions, preferences, or boundaries. And this is the hidden cost of the harmlessness trap. It doesn't just make you invisible to others, it makes you invisible to yourself. You become so disconnected from your own thoughts, feelings, and desires that you genuinely don't know what you want anymore. You've become a mirror, reflecting back whatever you think others want to see. But there is nothing solid behind the reflection. But here is where the story gets interesting, because Sarah's journey out of this trap taught me something profound about human nature. When she finally started speaking up thirsty tentatively, at first, then with growing confidence, something amazing happened. The people who truly mattered didn't leave. In fact, they got closer to her. Her best friend told her, "I've been waiting for years to meet the real you." Her sister said, "I always sensed there was more to you, but I didn't know how to reach it." Even her co-workers started treating her differently, with more respect, more genuine interest, because here is what Sarah discovered, and what everyone who escapes this trap eventually learns. People aren't drawn to perfection. They're drawn to authenticity. They're not looking for someone who never disagrees with them. Footy. They're looking for someone real enough to have their own thoughts and brave enough to share them. This connects to something fascinating that psychologists call the pratfall effect. Basically, people who are seen as highly competent actually become more likable when they make small mistakes or show vulnerability. Why? Because it makes them human. It makes them relatable. Perfect people are intimidating and ultimately boring. Real people, free with their flaws, opinions, and occasional awkwardness, are magnetic. But stepping out of the harmlessness trap requires something that feels absolutely terrifying to most nice people: the willingness to disappoint others. This is the big fear, isn't it? The fear that if you stop being endlessly accommodating, people will leave. The fear that your value lies entirely in your usefulness to others. Here is what I want you to understand. That fear is both understandable and completely backwards. Yes, some people might leave when you start having boundaries. But here is the thing. Fisto. Those are exactly the people you want to leave. Those are the people who were never really connected to you anyway. They were connected to what you could do for them. The people who matter, the people who are capable of real relationship, will respect you more when you start respecting yourself. They'll be relieved that they finally get to meet the real you. They might even be inspired by your courage to stop performing and start living. Let me share something that might sound counterintuitive. Conflict isn't the enemy of love. Sifty, it is often the pathway to deeper love. When you disagree with someone and work through it together, when you have different perspectives and find a way to honor both, when you can be upset with each other and still choose to stay foodie, that is when real intimacy happens. Think about the relationships in your life that feel most meaningful. I guarantee you they're not the ones where everything is always smooth and agreeable. They're the ones where you've been through something together, where you've seen each other's full humanity. Theda, the beautiful parts and the messy parts. Sibben, and chosen to love each other anyway. This is why the harmlessness trap is so insidious. It promises connection while actually preventing it. It offers the appearance of love while blocking the vulnerability that real love requires. It gives you the approval of strangers while costing you the intimacy of true friendship. But breaking out of this pattern isn't just about learning to say no fiffin. Though that is certainly part of it, it is about fundamentally shifting how you think about your role in relationships. Instead of asking, "What do they want from me?" you start asking, "What do I want to bring to this?" Instead of, "How can I avoid upsetting them?" you start asking, "How can I be honest and kind at the same time?" This shift is profound because it moves you from a position of reaction to a position of choice. When you are trapped in niceness, you are constantly responding to what you think others expect. When you embrace authentic kindness, you are choosing how to show up based on your own values and the genuine care you feel. And here is something beautiful that happens when you make this shift. You start attracting different kinds of people into your life. Instead of those who want to use your niceness, you attract those who appreciate your authenticity. Instead of relationships based on what you can provide, you build relationships based on who you are. The neuroscience behind this is fascinating. When we're constantly suppressing our authentic responses in favor of what we think others want, we're essentially living in a state of chronic stress. Our brains are working overtime to monitor, adjust, and perform. But when we give ourselves permission to be real, something remarkable happens in our nervous system. We relax. We become more present. We actually have more energy for genuine connection because we're not exhausting ourselves trying to be someone else. This is why people who've escaped the harmlessness trap often report feeling like they're finally awake after years of sleepwalking through their relationships. They describe a sense of coming home to themselves that they didn't even realize they'd been missing. But let's address the elephant in the room. What about kindness? What about compassion? What about making the world a better place? Because if you are someone who has been trapped in niceness, these values matter deeply to you. You are not reading this because you want to become selfish or cruel. 2. You are reading this because you want to figure out how to be genuinely good in a way that doesn't destroy you. Here is the beautiful truth. Authentic kindness is actually more powerful than niceness ever could be. When you are kind from a place of choice rather than fear, when you are compassionate because you want to be rather than because you are afraid, not to be, your kindness carries weight. It means something. It changes people. Think about the kindness that has most impacted your own life. Was it from someone who was nice to everyone all the time? Or was it from someone who chose to be kind to you in a specific moment when you really needed it? Was it generic pleasantness? Or was it thoughtful, intentional care? Real kindness requires discernment. It requires the ability to see what someone actually needs rather than just what they want. Sometimes the kindest thing you can do is say no. Sometimes it is telling someone a truth they don't want to hear. Sometimes it is refusing to enable their worst impulses, even if that upsets them in the moment. This is what separates authentic kindness from performative niceness. Authentic kindness serves the other person's highest good, even when that is uncomfortable. Niceness just tries to keep everyone happy in the moment, regardless of the long-term consequences. And here is something else that is important to understand. When you stop being harmlessly nice and start being authentically kind, you give other people permission to do the same. Your courage to be real creates space for others to be real too. Your willingness to have boundaries teaches others that they can have boundaries. Your decision to honor your own needs gives others permission to honor theirs. This ripple effect is one of the most beautiful aspects of escaping the harmlessness trap. You don't just heal yourself, you create healing in your relationships and communities. You model what it looks like to be both caring and whole, both generous and self-respecting. But I won't lie to you, this journey isn't always easy. There will be moments when you speak up and someone gets upset. There will be times when you set a boundary and someone tries to make you feel guilty about it. There will be people who preferred the old, endlessly accommodating version of you and who will try to pull you back into that role. In those moments, remember this: their discomfort with your authenticity says nothing about your worth and everything about their own relationship with truth. People who are uncomfortable with your boundaries are usually people who are benefiting from your lack of boundaries. People who get upset when you start honoring yourself are usually people who are taking you for granted. This doesn't make them evil, it just makes them human. We all have a tendency to want others to stay in roles that serve us, even when those roles are harmful to them. But you don't have to sacrifice yourself to maintain other people's comfort. In fact, doing so serves no one in the long run. Here is a practical framework that can help you navigate this transition. The difference between being agreeable and being accommodating. Being agreeable means you are pleasant to be around, open to other perspectives, and willing to find common ground. Being accommodating means you automatically defer to others, suppress your own needs, and avoid any form of conflict. You can be agreeable without being accommodating. You can be kind without being a pushover. You can care about others without abandoning yourself. The key is learning to hold both your own needs and others' needs as important, rather than automatically prioritizing theirs over yours. This might look like saying, "I care about what you are going through, and I am not available to talk about it right now." Or, "I love you, and I disagree with that decision." Or, "I want to help, and this particular request doesn't work for me." Notice how these statements honor both your truth and your care for the other person. They're not harsh or selfish. They're honest and boundaried. They communicate that you are a whole person with your own inner life, not just a support system for others. As you practice this new way of being, you'll likely discover something surprising. Most people actually prefer the authentic version of you. They might not always like what you have to say, but they respect you more for saying it. They might be initially surprised by your boundaries, but they quickly learn to work within them. They might miss having unlimited access to your time and energy, but they appreciate the quality of connection that comes from interacting with someone who is fully present rather than resentfully accommodating. And perhaps most importantly, you'll start to like yourself more when you stop betraying yourself in small ways every day, when you stop saying yes when you mean no, when you stop smiling through your own discomfort. Something profound happens. You start to trust yourself again. You start to believe that your thoughts and feelings matter. You start to see that you are worthy of the same care and consideration you've been giving everyone else. This is the ultimate gift of escaping the harmlessness trap. You get to come home to yourself. You get to discover who you actually are when you are not busy being who you think everyone else wants you to be. You get to explore your own preferences, opinions, and desires without the constant filter of "but what will they think?" And here is the most beautiful part. When you finally allow yourself to be seen as you truly are, you create the possibility for others to truly love you. Not the performance version of you, not the endlessly accommodating version of you, but the real, complicated, fascinating, fully human version of you, because that is who you were always meant to be. Not harmlessly nice, but powerfully kind. Not invisibly agreeable, but authentically present. Not perfect, but real. And real is always more beautiful than perfect, more magnetic than agreeable, more lovable than nice. The world doesn't need another person who smiles through their pain and says yes to everything. The world needs you, Suai, the real you, with all your thoughts and feelings and preferences and boundaries intact. The world needs your authentic kindness, your thoughtful disagreement, your principled stands, and yes, even your occasional bad moods. Because when you show up as your full self, you give everyone around you permission to do the same. And that is how we create a world where connection is real, where kindness has power, and where being good doesn't require being invisible. The choice is yours. You can continue to be harmlessly nice and remain safely invisible, or you can risk being authentically kind and finally allow yourself to be truly seen. The first option feels safer, but the second option is where life actually happens. The first option protects you from rejection, but the second option opens you to genuine love. Which will you choose?